Welcome to a new video. Let's take a look at some new malicious compliance stories. The first story is called, I'm Not the Boss. I had a job for a while where I was supposed to be the night shift quality control tech but ended up running the entire shift because the supervisor was unreliable. He was eventually fired and I officially ran the shift for a few months before a new supervisor was hired. We'll call him Jim. Jim was drinking buddies with the owner and would often call off or show up drunk. In 6 months, I don't believe he ever worked a full 40-hour week. Everyone just kind of rolled with the idea that Jim was in charge on paper but I was in charge in reality. He really didn't like that. He went crying to human resources and after yet another night where Jim showed up long enough to screw up everything and leave, they called me in. The conversation went like this, you know you're not the boss, right? Yes. Jim says the guys listen to you more than him. It's hard to listen to a guy who's never here. That's a bad attitude. I'm sending you to a class on how to deal with difficult people. And remember, you're not a boss. So what do I do if Jim doesn't show up again? You're not a boss. You do nothing. Awesome. She then issued me write-ups detailing this conversation. 2 nights later, Jim calls off. I listened. The second shift supervisor calls me into the office to tell me what's going on and has me set the schedule. I'm not a boss. He asks me if I'm going to call the production manager. I told him to do it, no answer. And he tried calling a few other managers. No answer. Workers are coming in, what are we doing? Don't know, I'm not a boss. The second shift supervisor set the schedule and left. He didn't get paid enough to deal with this either. The supervisors were the only ones with machine lock codes to fix faults. The press goes down. I'm not a boss. Hey, I need tooling only the supervisor can issue. I'm not a boss. I need paperwork not related to quality. I'm not a boss. Finally, my senior operator got fed up with sweeping and asked me for the human resources number. Now that I can definitely do. Dial 9 for an outside line. He called her repeatedly for close to half an hour before she answered. He told her to get to the shop and hung up. The whole shift sat down for about an hour before she showed up. She asked me, why is nothing running? I'm not a boss. Well, where's Jim? He called off. Well, then you're in charge. I reached into my desk and pulled out the training slip and write-ups she gave me earlier. Not according to these. I didn't mean it like that. Then you shouldn't have written it like that. What will it take to get you to forget that conversation? An apology, cancel my class, and next time that alcoholic comes crying to you, tell him that we'll all start treating him like he's in charge when he starts acting like it. After the most insincere apology I have ever heard, I got everything running again and never heard anything about it again. And as a bonus, I got a new job a few months later and Jim quit in the middle of a full-on 5-year-old temper tantrum when they informed him that he'd have to cover my job until they found a replacement. It was beautiful and my senior operator got a nice promotion out of it. The next story is called, Don't Order Any Upgraded Equipment. I work in IT and I'm responsible for ordering all technology-related equipment. About a year ago, I was in charge of getting required specifications for computer needs and putting in an order for about 500 computers with everything necessary for a new office building that was opening that my company manages. Being that I had already done this same quote for multiple buildings, I knew exactly what was needed. The standard PC build from our supplier comes with 4 GB memory. To run specific software, I have to include at minimum 8, otherwise, the computer all but stops working. When making the build through our vendor, the additional memory only runs us an extra $26 per computer. I put the quote together and send it off to our budgeting department for final approval and ordering. Within an hour, I received the following emails from the head of budgeting. Hi, I see you included an extra charge of 500 times $26 for computer memory? Yes, we need it to run this specific software. Will it run without the extra memory? Not well. We are already over budget. Don't order any upgraded equipment. Just get the basic stuff. After trying to explain why it was important several times and how the software would barely work with 4 GB, I just complied. So I revised the order without the memory and sent it back to him. A few weeks later, the computers get delivered and are set up in the new offices. I get them all imaged with the software over the weekend and ready to go. First thing Monday morning I come into a frantic slew of emails about how the specialized software won't run and nobody can do their job. After a few back and forth emails with the chief operating officer, I sent the full email chain with the budgeting department, explaining what happened. I am told to immediately put in an order for the extra memory, have it delivered as soon as possible, and get it installed immediately. By ordering the memory separately instead of installing initially at $26 per stick, we had to pay an extra $50,000. Not only that, but I got a ton of overtime and the company lost out on a week's worth of productivity. All in all, the company probably lost close to $200,000. He didn't get fired, but he now has his own policy of ordering what the IT guy suggests, no questions asked. The third story is called, All Tasks Must Be Completed Before Clocking Out. So, I worked for Worst Rent as a warehouse supervisor many months ago. My general manager happened to be Satan. She was an external hire, which is rare, because Worst Renters usually promote from within, at least. She felt the best way to leave her mark on the store was to micromanage everyone, even though she barely knew her job, and definitely didn't know ours. One of her brilliant ideas was that if a task was started by a warehouse employee, they were not allowed to clock out until the task was finished. We are also under no circumstances allowed to go to overtime, nor were any of the part-timers allowed to exceed their 32 hours, due to not wanting to offer everyone full-time benefits. She also insisted that all management and full-time employees were required to work Saturdays, the last day of pay week, even though that is absolutely the slowest day of the week for what we did, and wound up being a waste of time. Displays can't be reset on a Saturday, as that's one of our busiest days for sales. Now, for the sales floor, this is something that could be functional. Since their tasks are generally fairly short, as they are primarily expected to be helping customers. However, most of the things in the warehouse were long and involved. I attempted to explain to her the best way to handle stuff like this is to allow a first shift employee to start something, then catch up their replacement on the project, and switch over. Completely resetting displays, for example, can take up to 6 hours, depending on the display. She would have none of my backtalk, and my job was to obey her. All right then, let the malicious compliance commence. I got my crew together, explained the situation, and most of them agreed they would be down for a shorter shift, while my 2 full-time members were fine with staying late, and then seeing where that put them at the end of the week. Many of them were almost as gleeful as I was, as Satan was not well liked among any of my staff. So, we started projects throughout the week as they were assigned to us. However, finish one reset in 6 hours on an 8-hour shift? Sorry, you're part-time, and I don't have another task for you that you can complete before you clock out. Best head on home. Full-time staff? Sure thing. Do 3 reset projects that take 4 hours each on a 9-hour shift. If you're up for it, that's cool. The first week, my part-timers averaged around 28 instead of 32 hours and got to leave early every shift. No part-timers were scheduled for Saturday, as the full-timers and I were required to be there on Saturday due to her inability to understand staffing. And my full-timers and I all left early on Friday in order to not hit overtime. I received a furious phone call about there being no one in the warehouse to pull appliances. You're right, Satan, but unfortunately, none of the part-timers were scheduled for Saturday, and the rest of us have all maxed out our hours for the week. You can call in the part-timers to see if they would be willing to work on their days off. She hung up on me without even saying anything after I pointed that out, presumably to start frantically calling in the rest of the warehouse staff. Now, I did tell them they are totally free to say no to her, they aren't required to work on a scheduled day off and she can't force you to work. But you're also short on hours, so if you want to come in to pick up more hours, that's fine. Turns out, all the part-timers were happy with letting Satan suffer. I knew I was going to get hauled in to get screamed at in person about the staffing issue that Sunday, so I pulled the timesheets, schedule, and her email stating the policy, as well as my responded objection as soon as I got in to start doing the signs in the store at 7 for the new ad. And yes, as soon as 11:30 came around and Satan pulled into the parking lot, I got pulled into the conference room and screamed at. I didn't say a word, and just put her email down on the table, and then showed her the rest of the documents. Policy rescinded for warehouse staff shortly after I left, via email. I forwarded my reply to her, and everyone else on the management team asking for clarification about whether the full-timers were still required to work Saturdays, or should I schedule part-timers instead. Response received, just make sure there is staff here on Saturdays, I don't care how you write the schedule. Turns out, we were down almost $15,000 in sales, on a day we were projected to do $52,000 due to the staff having to tell everyone the televisions they wanted were out of stock but would be available Sunday, since you have to have specific training on the thing we used to get televisions off the higher shelves. The next story is called, Won't Accept Homework? This story was told to me by my mother about when she was in college in 1985. My mother was approaching the end of her undergraduate years, and she had to take an accounting class in order to graduate and move along to law school. It was her least favorite class by a mile, and she didn't pay attention or take notes. As the end of the semester was approaching, she saw her main problem in the class. Because she hated accounting, she hadn't done so much as a single page of the required homework, and the final for the class was approaching quickly. The test was in early December, and it was already late November. Instead of going home to spend time with her family, she worked for hours upon hours over the Thanksgiving weekend on her extremely late assignments. She didn't sleep for 2 nights in a row, and the only reason she slept on the third was that her roommate convinced her that it was for the best. She somehow finished an entire semester's work in only 72 hours, and she says that it was some of the most thorough work she had ever done. The next week, she handed her a huge stack of homework to the professor of the class. She knew exactly what he was going to say, but she thought it was worth a shot anyway. The professor told her that he wouldn't accept any assignment this late, much less 2 binders of it. He told her to go read the syllabus again for my late work policies. Here's where the malicious compliance kicks in. My mother scoured the syllabus looking for his late work policy. The problem was, the syllabus didn't have a single word about late work. My mother decided to use this to her advantage and came in before class the next day with the same 2 binders full of work. The professor told her again that he wouldn't accept her work, and my mum told him about the lack of a late work policy in the syllabus. She had even brought her own copy, and the professor had to look through it himself to see that he had failed to include anything about his late work policy. "Well, I'll have to change that," he said, and my mother quickly shot back. "Yes, so here's my work for you to grade. Goodbye." The professor kept to his syllabus and graded all of my mum's work, and she got a B on the final. She has also told me that putting off all that homework was the worst decision she had ever made, and she wishes she could have gone back and done it all when she was actually supposed to. The last story is called Special Homemade Salad. My mum usually plans for doing more things than she can actually manage on her own. Of course, as her only daughter, I was expected to help with any cooking and baking she signed our family up for. She did this a lot, but usually at least had already picked out the recipe and all the ingredients bought and laid out on the counter to just use. Not this time. I was on summer break, so, to be honest, I had nothing better to do since I luckily didn't have to work and the internship I tried for didn't select me. One day she called me in the morning after she'd gone in probably around 8 or 9. Yes, I was still asleep. Apparently, she'd completely forgotten she said she'd bring a salad to a work potluck the same day. Now, she obviously had the recipe picked out and she'd already told everyone she was bringing this specific salad, so she absolutely needed me to go to the store, grab the ingredients, make the salad and bring it to her office before noon. Okay, I was actually a good, obedient daughter. I get up and go to the store. I'm looking through this recipe and this salad is actually a dessert. It's a typical Midwest recipe called ambrosia salad. Why it's called a salad I still don't know, since it's essentially a fruit mix in a sugar fluff. Anyway, one of the ingredients was maraschino cherries. So I'm in the baking aisle looking for the normal small jar of red cherries in sugar syrup. Eventually, I find a said jar, but immediately my eyes are drawn to the aqua blue color pulsating next to it. What is this? Blue maraschino cherries. Why does such a thing exist? It's not flavored. It has no holiday-themed advertisement scrawled along with its paper label. Every word indicates it's a regular jar of maraschino cherries other than the beautiful blue blobs hanging suspended in the equally beautiful blue syrup. So what do? I buy the blue jar, of course. You can easily see where this went. I used the blue cherries in place of the normal expected red cherries. I covered the dish with aluminum foil to keep it from spilling in the car, as I then dutifully dropped off the forgotten at home dish to my mum's work before heading off to Barnes & Noble to look at mangas. It was another hour or so before my phone started to ring. Apparently, Mum couldn't answer the questions regarding what the blue blobs were in her salad, even though she apparently had made it. Of course, she owned up to her co-workers about not making the dish after explaining what I'd done, and they all thought it was hilarious. It took a while for her to be able to bring in a dish without being asked if she'd made sure she actually made it. Thanks for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please consider subscribing to the channel for more content. Let me know what you think about the stories in the comment section below. Have a great day.